Imagine this: a handsome, charismatic man, the kind you might see on a college campus or at a political rally, someone who seems completely normal. Now imagine that same man is responsible for the brutal murders of dozens of young women. That's the chilling reality of Ted Bundy. Today, we're going to dive into the story of Ted Bundy. We'll look at his early life, the chilling pattern of his crimes, the desperate hunt to stop him, and how he was finally brought to justice. It's a story that proves evil often hides in plain sight. Ted Bundy was born Theodore Robert Cowell in Burlington, Vermont, on November 24, 1946. His mother, Eleanor Louise Cowell, was 22 and unmarried. During that time, this was looked down upon. His grandparents didn't want people treating his daughter differently, so they pretended to be his parents. Ted, being raised by his grandparents, believed his mother was his older sister. This fundamental deception was a strange start to his life. In 1951, when Ted was about 4, his mother Louise moved them to Tacoma, Washington. There, she married Johnny Bundy. Ted took his stepfather's last name. But it wasn't a happy home. Ted reportedly resented Johnny, viewing him as uneducated and working class. Louise and Johnny went on to have several more children, creating a normal family for them that Ted never quite fit into. Even from a young age, unsettling stories emerged about Ted. There were reports of him placing knives around his sleeping aunt's bed when he was just 3. Later, he showed a fascination with morbid topics and animal cruelty. As a teenager, he was a known peeping Tom, sneaking around at night to watch people in their homes, and he often stole things without showing any remorse. Academically, Ted was intelligent and did well in school. Socially, it was a different story. He struggled to connect with peers, often observing others to mimic normal social behavior. This early development of a mask would become a hallmark of his adult life. Ted enrolled at the University of Washington, where he met a young woman from California, Diane Edwards. He later claimed he was attracted to her because she had everything he felt he lacked: class, influence, and money. The relationship they had made a lasting impact on him. Diane ended things. Ted was devastated by this. It's often noted that many of his later victims resembled her, attractive, with long, dark hair. In 1969, Ted began a 6-year relationship with Elizabeth Klopfer, a single mother he met in a Seattle bar. Elizabeth later described Ted as warm and loving, but she also noted he had financial struggles and would help him with money. She fell in love with him almost immediately. Over time, he showed possessiveness and had outbursts of anger. He later admitted to trying to kill her once. By the mid-1970s, Ted had cultivated a confident, charismatic public image. He was a psychology graduate, accepted into law school in Utah, and even worked on a Republican governor's campaign in Washington, earning a letter of recommendation. Many described him as kind, empathetic, and handsome, traits that would tragically help him gain his victims' trust. Behind this polished facade, Ted's dark fixations were escalating. He was spending nights canvassing neighborhoods, looking into windows. By 1974, his fantasies were no longer enough. The shift from dark thoughts to violent action had begun. The nightmare began in January 1974. Karen Sparks, an 18-year-old University of Washington student, was brutally attacked in her Seattle apartment. She was bludgeoned and sexually assaulted. Karen miraculously survived, but with permanent brain damage. This was his first known victim. Just weeks later, on February 1, 1974, Linda Ann Healy, another University of Washington student, vanished from her off-campus home. Blood was found on her pillow. Linda's disappearance was the first confirmed murder, the beginning of this nightmare. Her remains were found a year later on Taylor Mountain. In the months that followed, more young women vanished from the Seattle area and nearby Oregon. Stories circulated. Women last seen with a young, dark-haired man named Ted, who often pretended to be injured or impersonated an authority figure to lure them into his VW Beetle. Their willingness to help, tragically, often sealed their fate. Throughout 1974, the disappearances continued, following a chilling pattern. When Ted moved to Utah in late 1974 for law school, the murders followed him, spreading across Utah, Idaho, and Colorado. The sheer volume of victims, often abducted in broad daylight, was staggering. Communities across multiple states were gripped by fear. College campuses, once vibrant, became places of palpable anxiety. Students walked in groups, curfews were imposed, and a pervasive unease made every stranger a potential threat. Every tan Volkswagen Beetle became a terrifying sight. Bundy's killings followed a horrifying ritual. He often sexually assaulted his victims, then beat or strangled them to death. He also engaged in necrophilia, returning to where he left the bodies to commit sexual acts. He'd repeat until decomposition, or animals made it impossible to do so. At least 12 of his victims were decapitated. It's believed he kept some of their heads in his apartment for a time, viewing them as trophies, deriving sick pleasure from reliving his crimes by looking or touching them. His confirmed victim list grew rapidly. From February through July 1974, multiple women disappeared. Their remains often found in remote areas like Taylor Mountain and Issaquah, Washington. The victims ranged from 18 to 23 years old. He moved through Utah, Colorado, and Idaho. More women vanished, including a 16-year-old ambushed in Holiday, Utah, and a 15-year-old from a youth conference. Many of these victims' bodies were never recovered, their fates known only through Bundy's confessions later on. Law enforcement struggled. The disappearances spanned multiple jurisdictions, and connecting the dots was difficult with limited communication between agencies. Bundy was meticulous, leaving little forensic evidence at abduction sites. The first break came on August 16, 1975, in Salt Lake City, Utah. A highway patrol officer pulled Ted over for suspicious driving. The officer noticed the passenger seat was missing and asked Ted to step out. They searched his car. The officer found something he called a murder kit: a pantyhose mask, ski mask, handcuffs, rope, an ice pick, a crowbar, and trash bags. This arrest led detectives to interview Elizabeth Klopfer. She recounted her suspicions, finding odd items like plaster of Paris, crutches, surgical gloves, and a meat cleaver. She also revealed Ted's possessiveness over her long hair. She said he threatened to break her fucking neck if she told anyone about his stolen items. Her information was critical. Police located Ted's VW Beetle, which he had sold to a teenager. Forensic testing found hairs matching 3 different women, 2 missing, and 1 who had survived an attempted kidnapping. This survivor bravely identified Ted in a lineup, stating he had pretended to be Officer Roseland. Despite this, Ted was released on bail. He was eventually convicted of aggravated kidnapping and attempted criminal assault in February 1976 for that one victim's case, receiving a 15-year sentence. But prison didn't hold him. In June 1977, during a trial transfer in Aspen, Colorado, he jumped from a courthouse window, escaping for 8 days. The police blocked both sides of town, and he was recaptured. His most infamous escape came on December 30th, 1977. He lost over 30 pounds, then squeezed through a hole he'd made in his cell ceiling, dropped into the jailer's apartment below, stole clothes, and simply walked out the front door, gaining a 15-hour head start. Ted Bundy's second escape led him to Florida, where he unleashed his most brutal attacks. On January 15, 1978, he broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. In a terrifying 15-minute rampage, he attacked 4 women with a piece of firewood and a nylon stocking. Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy were killed. Karen Chandler and Kathy Kleiner were severely injured, their faces battered, bones broken. On Lisa Levy's body, Bundy left a distinctive bite mark. This seemingly random act of violence would later become a critical piece of evidence. Forensic odontologist Dr. Richard Suverin would match that unique bite mark directly to Ted Bundy's crooked teeth in court. Weeks later, on February 9th, Bundy kidnapped and murdered 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. His reign of terror finally ended on February 15, 1978, when a Pensacola police officer stopped him in a stolen vehicle. Ted, desperate to avoid capture, fought back, kicking the officer and attempting to flee, but was finally tackled and apprehended. Inside the stolen car, police found 3 sets of IDs belonging to women from Florida State University, along with stolen credit cards and even a stolen TV. Ted Bundy's trials were a national spectacle, the first to be televised nationally in the U.S. Bundy, despite his clear guilt, often represented himself, attempting to use his charm and intelligence to manipulate the proceedings. But the evidence was overwhelming, especially the damning bite mark comparison. During the penalty phase of his trial in February 1980, in a bizarre move, Ted proposed to Carolyn Boone, a former co-worker, in the courtroom. Their marriage was legally recognized in Florida. Carolyn later gave birth to their daughter, Rose, in 1982. Carol and eventually came to terms with Ted's guilt and divorced him 3 years before his execution, ceasing visits during his final years. Ted Bundy spent years on death row, appealing his sentences. In the days leading up to his execution, he finally confessed to over 30 murders, providing chilling details, though investigators believe the true number could be far higher. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison, bringing an end to one of America's most infamous serial killers. Bundy's case profoundly impacted law enforcement, highlighting the need for interstate cooperation and advancements in forensic science. But beyond the legal and investigative lessons, his story serves as a chilling reminder that the face of true evil isn't always monstrous. Sometimes, it's the handsome, charming face of the person standing right next to you, a hidden predator operating in plain sight. What part of Ted Bundy's story do you find most unsettling? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're intrigued by true crime, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next story.